This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World. You've stumbled upon to JJ Meets World, and that was very smart podcast listener, because today's episode features Willy and Raul, and we talk about the High Plains Reader, now known as just the HPR. Do you want to know why HPR1.com is their web address, or some of the history of how the HPR came to be? This podcast is for you. Plus, if you're in advertising, we've got some real 21st century ideas coming at you. And Tucker and I talk about things that we like the smell of. All of this and more on today's episode of JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Sometimes I go to a restaurant and then people can smell me later and say like, oh, were you at the Frying Pan earlier today?
Subway has that effect.
Subway. I also think the Mexican Village, especially if you go on an all-you-can-eat fajita day.
Mm-hmm.
And you never like to smell like something else. You know, it's never a good thing when someone's like, oh, boy, you're at all-you-can-eat fajita Friday, weren't you? But at the same time, it's sort of a little badge of honor to say, like, yes, I have my life together enough where I went out and I ate food.
Right.
Or I...
oh, yeah, it's a real big bragging point there.
I ate
today. What'd you guys do?
I went to an establishment that cooked the food for me and did the dishes.
Right.
With the exception of Subway, in which case, technically, you take care of your own paper. But, do you associate any particular smells with things like even from your childhood? Like, it's like, oh, it smells like Mama Luke's house.
Well, actually, Mama Luke used to always wear this very particular perfume, and I couldn't tell you the name of it, but it was always, anytime I'd smell it, like, that's Mama Luke's perfume. And
Whale water.
Right. It's moonshine. But when she would visit Fargo, sometimes she would sleep in Brianna's bed, and Brianna would sleep with Dad or whatever like that. And then Brianna's bedroom would smell like Mama Luke for a couple of days.
And it's a good smell,
it's
right?
A very good smell.
I find it so interesting how smell is linked to your memory.
Right.
When I smell Pillsbury orange Danish rolls, I am instantly brought back to my childhood because that was our like special Sunday treat every now and then. So even today when I make orange Danish rolls, I never cook them the whole way through.
You're making some today.
I am. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some orange Danish rolls, some Pillsbury orange Danish rolls. And I won't bake them the whole way through. I like them a little bit doughy on the inside.
Okay.
Par bake is a term that I
So not al dente.
Recently.
You don't take it.
No, not to the tooth. But I love that smell, and I love when you can associate certain smells. A wood-burning fireplace takes me back to my old lake cabin.
Yeah. You know, it's a place that doesn't suck to smell like after you leave it would be Doolittle's, because they cook everything over a wood fire.
Yep.
So really you smell like a campfire, which I think is a great smell.
Oh, that's interesting, because I think that the smell of a campfire is the worst, most overpowering smell ever, especially the next morning when you're like, whoa, blah, 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 blah.
I bet this factors heavily, though, into our differences in taste as well. You know, like you don't like mayo and mustard, and I love those things. And I bet it has a lot to do with similar circuitry in the brain.
Probably.
I bet it has a lot to do.
I wouldn't be surprised
That's
if...
why you like Dave Matthews Band and I like Bob Dylan.
Oh, well, you're going to have to wait till another podcast to really dive deep into that. This podcast in particular, though, one thing I will always remember the smell of is the HPR. The HPR has a smell to it, and your hands have a smell.
The printing itself.
Yeah, it's got, and like you smell your fingers after you read through one of those, and not only are you marked with the ink, but you also get that certain smell, that smell of like a paper.
Right.
And it's a smell I like. I've always enjoyed it. And I've always enjoyed our guests, Willy and Raul, who are on the podcast today. You get a little history of the HPR. We talk a lot about advertising, and we all go in different directions. If this table we're sitting at is a compass, each of us represents one different direction. And boy, oh boy, sometimes, you'd end up southeast, but most of the time it was north versus south versus east versus west.
Well, and just 2 days ago, as of this recording, you and I had the privilege of being featured on the cover of their magazine, the High Plains Reader.
So if you haven't been to it yet, you should go. Not only the cover, but a great article as well,
by
too.
Gabrielle Hirsch, who we also recorded with today, and her podcast will be coming out in the near future.
We got a lot of stuff going on, folks. We've been very, very busy. In fact, we saw the sun rise and set at the podcast studio today. But that doesn't matter to you. You want to get onto the interview. You want to hear what we're going to talk about with Willy and Raul. A little FYI, please listen to this with headphones on whenever Willy talks, because there are some moments here that are not so carpool friendly, but always entertaining. And definitely stick around to the end to where we talk about some of the messed up stuff Willy Block has done over the years. So, folks, thank you very much for choosing JJ Meets World. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate. Stay tuned for great information coming up in the next couple podcasts about our 100th episode extravaganza. Is that how you say that word, extravaganza?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't feel like editing that out, so.
No, please don't. Podcast go!
JJ Meets World.
Willy, Raul, welcome to JJ Meets World. We've been trying to make this thing happen for a while, so I'm glad that we got a chunk of your time for this thing.
Raul finally left Mexico and got back here.
Or all the other things. Your
Never
Facebook.
really left Mexico.
There's a part of you there.
There's several. Actually, my camera still in Mexico. Got stolen from me.
Oh, shit. Well, you don't know
no
it's
good.
still in Mexico then.
I mean,
More than likely.
why are they going to just I don't know, take it to China where it's going to be worth more or something? I don't know.
Is it?
No,
You
everything-
think that
no, all
they'd be more of an
electronics-
abundance of cameras in China.
Right. In Mexico, all electronics are super expensive. So it's
okay.
worth a lot more.
Really?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like, cars are more expensive. Electronics are more expensive. Just recently, in the last few years, they did start importing stuff from China.
Okay.
But it's really weird. You can't get Alibaba to ship to Mexico. It's really, really strange. Yeah. Yeah, because I was trying to get my uncle some stuff off of AliExpress, and they wouldn't deliver to Mexico. And I'm like, so I
Weird.
have to send it to the United States and then re-mail it to Mexico. Okay.
I desperately want to visit Cuba before.
Oh, yes.
Before we fully, say okay, well, here's everything that you've missed for the last 60 years from the United States, because I hear it's like walking back in time,
Right.
and it's just a very unique thing, and not just the vehicles, but even stuff like with building materials, and I hear it's just, and you get to see this little tiny snippet of a bygone era.
Right. Well, you could always go. You
Yeah,
could
if
always
only
go
we could
through
freeze
Mexico.
Cuba at that time.
Well,
You don't think? Look, we got a love affair with the 1950s.
Well,
and
we
so
do,
wouldn't it be fun?
but the Cubans, I think, were like, can we just not die every day? Can we just please have a better lifestyle than what
they've
we've been
got
used
better
to?
health care than we
yeah,
do.
they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that for the cost of it, right? Yeah.
I don't think life would
JJ,
be.
my parents went over there as soon as Obama freed it up,
Mm-hmm.
and they said the exact same thing, but then it got super awkward because I'd be out with them and we'd be meeting with because we're in North Dakota. And they'd be like, "Oh, we just got back from Cuba," and they'd be like, "Oh." So you're so you're a bunch of commies.
Be like, well,
Bet you're happy that no Obama got you in there, huh?
Yeah.
well, because you're friends with Jack Lubka, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so Jack Lubka just got his medical degree while studying in Cuba.
Yeah.
Cuba.
No, they said the exact same thing. It was weird that they enjoyed the time warp, but they could tell that all the Cubans were like,
they were ready.
yeah, they were like, hey, we're done with.
If your mom was like, "Hey,
Can we get a Tesla? Can we get a Tesla?"
If your mom wants to go back to Cuba, would she go to your dad and be like, "Hey, can we do the time warp again?" See what I just did there, Willie?
Yeah,
I just made Willie laugh, you guys.
I caught that.
He's smiling right now.
Is that
That's
like
weird.
a Rocky Horror Picture Show
Yeah.
reference?
Yeah. So here's the thing I found out about Willie today, JJ. Willie fucking hates the HPR cover of us.
Really?
Fucking hates the HPR cover of us that Raul
Made.
Yeah.
No,
Well, Will hates just about everything.
He hates most things.
No, well, because the earbuds are red and blue. You guys aren't a political comment.
Yeah, by the way, thank you very much for making me the
was
blue.
wondering why I was a Republican.
They were veins. They were veins.
No, they
Yeah,
weren't.
I get it,
They were
though.
veins,
And that's why the blood's coming out of
arteries.
your ear.
Get
Yeah.
it?
That's right. It's a play off of the two Fritas with the heart transfusion. It's fine. Nobody has to get it. As long as I do, I'm fine. And you know,
I love
every
that
time I make
philosophy,
Will
though.
growl like that,
Basically,
angel
every,
gets its wings. you know,
basically
something-
every time basically every time Raul and I work on a cover for the HPR, we're sitting by his computer and the whole HPR staff just sits outside and laughs because it's nothing but like, hey, fuck you. No, fuck you. No, and fuck you. And no, oh, that's wrong. No, that's stupid. That's stupid. That's more stupid. That's even more stupid. And fuck you.
We just had John Lamb, and we're getting a real difference in the editorial styles of Forum and the High Plains Reader.
The High Plains Reader's got a different vibe.
So I had one question prepped for this entire thing.
Oh, wow.
And it was, tell me what it's like to work on the cover of a publication like the High Plains Reader, that's the moment you want to grab them. If there's somebody who's never picked up the HPR before, maybe they're here from out of town, and you get the ability to show some of the content, but it is 100% creative based. So it's not like picking up a USA Today, which is story with a photo that accompanies it. No, there's no creative energy really put into that at all. It's a template that's built out. You get to build a work of art every single week that's on the cover. So what's it like to build that?
It's
Also,
art, Willie.
Secondly, how many times have you built it like this goes to press like in an hour? We got to get something on there ASAP.
Well, maybe
I don't know.
I don't know if it's kind of maybe people don't understand how the reader is made. It is. We have our schedule is we start production for the paper on Monday. That's when my covers due
On Monday.
Never done.
Right.
Well, I would say about 50% of the time I get it done on Monday, and the other half of the time it goes to Tuesday, and then some rare occasions it does get to Wednesday right before press time. But it has to do with like parts, like if something's missing, if there's a gap with one of our photos, or we're missing, or the cover story changes at the last minute. I've had to make the cover twice and sometimes 3 times. So it's always like, you kind of just move and work with whatever you got. It's problem solving is what it really comes down to. So you just got like these two odd ends, and you just got to make them work somehow.
Well, yeah, but that's what art is in general, is problem solving.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why, so even though we butt heads a lot, like I don't want somebody that's going to be like, yeah, it's, oh my God, that's so great. Like, I mean, nobody wants you want somebody who's going to challenge you. It's going to be, so we do squabble, but also the work and the covers that we've made have always come out to be some of my favorite because of how differently we look at things.
I'd say it's been half and half. We've had several covers where we've been able to spend a day or two on them.
Yeah.
But then
And then they go far.
And then there's other ones where Raul calls me up and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, well, I'm watching Wolverine for the 6th time. So something, no, all right, I'll come over.
Yeah.
And he's like, "We've got 2 hours." And I go, all right, game on. And we go.
And that's kind of also the, like there's usually some time, but when you have 0 time at all and you're able to pull something off, like, and it actually looks good and works. I mean, that there's kind of a rush from that. There is something nice about having a deadline that is kind of like always ticking in the background. If you miss it, you miss the press deadline. People don't get paid. We end up like really screwing up a bunch of stuff. So it's like, I don't know, the pressure of that, it does kind of get a little bit of adrenaline going.
Ooh. All right. So we're all nerds here, right?
Yeah.
My favorite comparison is why I love that rush that Raul is talking about, is having a deadline and having no money or time. Is what are the best Star Wars?
Oh, the originals?
Why?
Was it
Because they had to make stuff up. Like they
were-
did
they-
invent his
they
own
had
special
limitations.
effects.
Limitations.
And then you gave George Lucas $1 billion fucking dollars, and what did he make? Absolute trash.
Right.
Absolute trash. He had all the time in the world, all the money, and it was garbage. But when you're forced with deadlines and money, and you're forced to be creative.
Constraints can force creativity
Yes.
because you have to, like you said before, you have to problem solve.
Yep.
Creativity is basically finding a relationship between two things that beforehand there seemed to be no relationship, and then you found a way to make it work. JJ and I used to work with Willy at the Fargo Theater. And Willy was known as the guy, because I would draw cartoons of the people sometimes, and Willy was the one who was always like scowling. I'm scowling right now. You can't really hear it, but Willy was the scowling, and you'd be like, "Hey, Willy, did you see this movie? Yeah, it sucked. Hated it. So bad."
No, there was the infamous one, JJ, when I came back from Transformers. Do you remember that?
I do.
And you were so upset with me because I was just like, finally, robots as big as houses. It was awesome. And you were just like,
You like Transformers?
Oh, God, it was garbage.
of course
Damn it,
it was
Willy.
garbage. But
doesn't
the
have to
robots
be.
were as big as they were. It was finally real.
So that was the thing, was they were big. Like, oh, that's the big robot.
Yep.
So I love what
counting-
makes Will happy. Like,
I'm counting on Will to shit on something. Like I'm like, oh, finally, we're gonna see eye to eye on something that we hate. And nope, he fucking turns around and like goes in the opposite direction. Do you remember? Because we saw that movie. Was it the first one or the second one that we saw together?
Second one.
Second one. So the second one is the first time they had the Hasbro Films logo.
Yeah.
And I remember that comes onto the screen and I went, what? Because you don't think of like Hasbro Films. Like, what else are you going to adapt Hasbro, you know? And I hated the second one just as much. And did you see Bumblebee?
No, I'm so
no,
curious about that.
I do want to see it.
I've heard it's the, like, if you hate all the other ones, this is the one you're
How
probably
is that
going to
at
like.
98%? Because into the Spideyverse, did you
Ooh, I
guys
wanna
see
that
that?
too.
Oh, yeah.
No spoilers. I haven't seen it.
Well, won't
no, I
spoil
won't. You can't spoil it. It was just freaking amazing.
the best Spider-Man
and it should
movie
be the
ever.
first time that Pixar should get beat at best
I agree.
animated film.
I agree. It's the best Spider-Man movie ever, I think.
Yeah.
Just in total. Just like I think Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman movie ever.
Yep.
But yeah, I had a grin on my face, and that's another movie, Spider-Verse, where it's kind of like Batman Brave and the Bold, where you can find, there's like a Batman of all seasons, you know? Batman's of different eras and different fan bases. Well, in Spider-Verse, you know, of whatever era of Spider-Man you're into, you're going to find something in this movie that speaks to you. So there were references from like the mid-90s when I was reading Spider-Man, and I'm like, oh my God, they're putting this stuff in here. That's amazing.
You know, it shocked me. JJ, you'll get a kick out of maybe not Tucker as much, but you know, my dad. And so Hunter and I were, that's my stepson, and we were just so crazy about that film. and my dad hates superhero movies. And once I said that it should beat Pixar for best animated film, he's like, "All right, I'll go." And he went by himself, and he was like, "That was amazing." And I was like,
He gets the Terry seal of approval.
Yeah.
Like,
Nice.
you really got to go for
well,
it.
for a guy that doesn't like superhero movies,
right.
Yeah. And the comic book version, because the Spideyverse was a thing in the comic books, super complicated, and you definitely had to know the backstory and everything like that. But the way they
did just a great job.
yeah.
So, Raul, back
How much
into
is
something
too much
you,
of this, though? Like, how much is too much
Well,
comic book material? It
that'll-
feels like it was a moment where it was like, oh my God, they're going to make another Batman movie. It was a big deal. And now it's like,
you see 9 of them released a
there's,
year.
yeah,
just
there's
the
stuff
size
on
of your-
Netflix.
it's the
There's
size
stuff
of
on
your
every
appetite for
channel.
it.
There's, yeah, I mean, but like, it doesn't seem like we've hit it yet, right? Like,
Yeah, I
they're still
guess
making more stuff.
I don't think we'll stop making them now because now the genre is viable because of the technology. So, and the thing is too is we've been making superhero movies for decades, but they
Right.
weren't superheroes. They were other action stars. They were James Bond, or they were other people that, for whatever reason, were sort of unkillable and amazing in the moment and would have these stories. So, superhero, the genre of the heroes quest has been around forever, and now we've got not just technology that matches gives you the ability to tell a lot of those stories the way they were told in the comic books, but you've also got people who grew up as fans of the comics. So the older movies, those were usually not made by people who had grown up as a fan of the comics. They were just made by movie people.
Right.
Even the X-Men in 2000, I mean, that's very much a Hollywood going, oh, there's this thing called the X-Men that's popular. Well, let's make our cool Hollywood version of it. So they'll be in black leather and blah.
Well, and building off of that into like Raul's point, I think the problem is that people see like, oh, these movies are making so much money
Right.
that we're going to see a bunch of the onslaught of the garbage superhero movies is going to be what kills the genre.
Right. That's why I'm so happy with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is even when their movies are bad, I still like them in total because of the project that's happening there. And I'm watching movies where I go, wow, this feels like Iron Man to me. Even if like the Thor movies are not that great until Ragnarok, but even the Thor movies, I'm going, this feels like Thor to me. This feels like the actual character that like the people who are making this movie understand and love the source material, and they're able to make something legit. Like when MCU got Spider-Man, and that first shot of Spider-Man where you saw the irises go in on his mask, they both found an explanation of why that works in this universe, and they put it in so that the classic fans would go, oh my God, I always loved watching his eyes do that in the comics, which was just an illustration style to show what Spider-Man is feeling, and now that love is there. So I'm such a massive MCU fanboy that
You guys
I
gonna
might
start
get a tattoo
writing-
of it at some point.
Are you guys going to have like
Of the whole
HBR
MCU.
like weekly superhero like stuff? Are you
I
looking
mean,
for content?
We kind of gravitate towards like what our writers want to do. We don't really try and push them like to do a specific thing. Although we do coverage of arts and entertainment. Most of the time, it's like, what are you into? Like, you obviously are a human being and you have thoughts and feelings. So like, yeah, we don't ever
But
shove that onto people.
HBR tries to be more local than.
No, that's our entire goal.
Yeah.
We want to be hyper local. We want to be, I'm almost insulated.
Can you guys give us a brief history of the HPR, how it came to be, and then how your involvement ended up?
That's on Raul.
Well, it was so I was living in Grafton. So I had a job doing graphic design at Morgan Publishing, and I had been there for like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. And right about 3:00 in the afternoon, this dude rushes in.
Get closer to the mic.
Close to the microphone.
He was working with me, right? But I never saw him before. I mean, it's the first time this guy's ever walked into the office. I had heard about him before. His name was Len. He rushes in, runs to his desk. He's got his box of Pop-Tarts, and he just starts working. And I try to talk to him. He's like really, really, really like busy. And I'm like, okay, well, nice to meet you. Blah, blah, blah. See ya. Left, came back. He was still there. Been there all night. His hair was all messed up. And I'm like, what the hell is he working on? And it was the High Plains Reader. He'd been there all night. And he'd taken his box of Pop-Tarts, scanned it on the scanner and changed it so the cover said Pop Arts. And and I was like, this is amazing. And I've never seen, back then, like alt weeklies, especially in the Midwest, were not very common. I mean, you'd see them in like New York and like the coast and stuff, but like you really wouldn't see them in the Midwest. And so when I saw it, it was like, it was just like a whole new beast. And I'm like, well, what is this? Why are you doing this? And it was like, he kind of explained it to me. Like, it was him and two other partners. One of them was like the editor. One of them was like the money guy. And he was the design guy. And they, kind of all co-owned the High Plains Reader. And they did it mostly out of love. They didn't make a lot of money doing it. There was a lot of work. And obviously, like, he was up all night. So that's kind of his cycle. It seemed like something, though, that like, it was just full of energy and passion, which is the opposite of everything else I was working on. So I, at the time, John Strand was who's my business partner at the Reader, was the editor of the Walsh County Record. And, I'm just like, man, have you seen this thing? It's so cool, and he's like, oh, yeah. I've seen it before. And like a couple months after I've been working there, Len tells me that he's moving to the cities and he's going to close up the Reader. I'm like, well, no, you can't. I'll do it. I'll do it for free. Like I just want to be a part of it. And he's like,
dummy.
No, all my business partners want to be out, and so we're just going to close it up. And so I talked to John and was like, there's this publication, and it looks like it. You can write, I can make pictures, and it just at the time it was really absurd. It was a really kind of like.
What year was this roughly?
This is 96.
Okay.
So this is right during that blizzard, right?
Right.
So it was 97.
No, the blizzard was in 96.
The flood of 97 is what you're thinking of, Willy.
Yeah. So
Owned.
Yeah. Well, as usual. Anyway, like I ended up like doing the Reader out of my living room on my computer at home in my off time when I wasn't working at the Walsh County Record / Morgan Publishing. Wow. And, that was it. And then the reason that we're in Fargo is because of that blizzard. The blizzard hit, all the power lines snapped. We had an office in Grand Forks, which we weren't using because it was too far for me to drive just to make a newspaper. So I just do it out of my living room. And we ended up like not having power for 2 weeks. And we were on a 2-week cycle back then, right? So I had to, at some point I was like, okay, I gotta put my computers in the car and I gotta drive somewhere where there's power. I mean, and it was like there was no heat. We were like taking like metal bars and chiseling wood out of like ice blocks to like heat the house. It's like old times. Wow. And
how do you chisel wood out of an ice block?
I mean, it's like more of like a metal bar that we had that we're using as an ice pick because the ice had frozen this whole cord of wood and it turned to a solid block of ice.
Got it.
And so we were just sitting there like picking little chunks of wood out. and then putting them by the fire so they would thaw out and lose some of the ice, and then like cooking them, But anyway, power's gone. So at the time, we had an office in Fargo. We had just gotten it in trade with the people from that own the Black Building. So we had that office in the Black Building, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. Put my cars in the back, my computers in the car, drove to Fargo. Slept on the 8th floor of the Black Building for 2 months, and I was doing the paper. That's how I moved to Fargo.
That's very sweet, actually. Wow.
And so I was like, yeah, I mean, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anything. And at the time, the paper was really a Grand Forks paper. We did all our coverage about Grand Forks, and stuff in Grand Forks. And so after the blizzard, I was in Fargo for a couple months, and then the flood came along, and all of a sudden, we lost our office. It burned down in the fire and the flood.
In Grand Forks. We lost all of our writers. We lost all of our advertisers. And basically just had the name. I mean, we just bought this paper, 6-7 months ago. And now at this point, we basically just have the name High Plains Reader and nothing else.
Okay.
So it was a very liberating thing. At the time, I was like, well, how did they do it? And what would they do? And why, what's their formula? And then after that fire, it was a really kind of like a cleansing thing. It's like, we don't have a script anymore. We don't have any binding. At the time, the paper was like 2 years old, and it's 22 years old now. So I've been doing it for 20 years. But I was always like at that early stage, very just like insecure about like I don't know what this is supposed to look like. I don't know what we're supposed to do. And at that point, it was just like, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, either we're going to drive the car really fast and crash it or not. So like, it changed a lot of things for us. We had to completely become a Fargo newspaper overnight.
And now the HPR is also what launched the career of John Lamb.
Yeah, it did.
Who we just had in the studio earlier today.
Yeah, John Lamb was part owner of the High Plains Reader at one point.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
wow.
Yes.
So I mean,
business partners.
you could always read John there, but then also, has Greg Carlson been the longest running writer, like continuous writer?
Actually, up until Christopher Jacobs, who passed away from cancer 2 years ago, used to be.
Okay.
And it might be the Gadfly.
Is he still in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But the Gadfly did have a 3-year hiatus because we had a sex column.
That's right. I remember. Was it something Moorhead? Stacey Moorhead?
Allison Moorhead.
Allison Moorhead.
And she had wrote a column about butt sex, and people just lost their mind. Like, lost their minds. I mean, this is... And it wasn't a great column, whatever, but like she was at the Spectrum, and apparently somebody on the forum board was like telling them that they shouldn't publish it. And we're like, well, that's bullshit. Like, that's censors. That's censors. We're like, we'll publish it, which was the stupidest thing. So at the time, we had actually been doing well. And it's weird. Sometimes we would be so like, in our own heads of like what we think is like right and wrong. But it's not necessarily what's good for us,
Right.
And nobody needed a butt sex column at the time. I mean, nobody was like, you know what I really want to read? So it's just, but I think it was also the time when Sex in the City was super big. So there was a lot of these like kind of columns popping up everywhere. And yeah.
I have a memory of Dan Savage actually commenting on the Allison Moorhead. Was that in another article?
We interviewed him. Yeah. We interviewed Dan Savage and put him on our cover. And John was just like, so should we have a sex column? He's like, no. He's like, no, you fools! Like, you're in the Midwest, and like I wouldn't try and you try to be where you're at and try to feature your audience, not like shove something down their throat.
Right.
I don't know exactly what his exact words were, but something to that
something
effect.
along those lines.
Yeah, and
did you lose any advertisers from that?
Yes, and
That's
when
you're doing something right.
Is it?
So
because you can sink the
side.
ship. Because you can sink the ship and be like, man, I kept it real.
Be like, what was that? Listen, get back to work at this Edward Jones.
We have a sponsor right now, and the only rule is we're not allowed to call her Nate or Freckleface or anything else like that.
Yeah, we're just not allowed to tease our sponsor, which,
Yeah.
by the way, this is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. You can find Natalie online and you give her a call. She'll sell your home or represent you if you're selling your home.
Go see Freckleface.
Yeah.
Go Nat.
Okay.
Tell him JJ Meets World sent you.
All right. Stupid memory of the HPR. Do you remember all the hate mail we got for when I wrote my review of Paranormal Activity?
Oh God, yeah. Well, Will's really good at hate.
Oh,
so
yeah.
he says. So we wrote this column called 25 Things I Hate About X.
No, yeah, but that was no, that was always supposed to be satire comedy, which nobody got.
But I mean,
So if no one's getting it, is it really comedy?
No, that means that it's perfect satire.
no, but in every joke, there's a little bit of something in there.
A little sauce in there.
And
A little,
they're really-
little
I mean-
special.
All right, no, but let's get back to the Paranormal Activity. So I wrote a lengthy movie review of that stupid ass movie, and we got so much hate mail,
Right.
and it was so funny because I was just like, horror movies about haunted houses are so dumb. Get out of the house. It's stupid. And it was more a rebuke of horror house movie, and they lost their minds.
So were these
Right.
like fans of the movie who were saying like they can't just leave their house, there are babies in there?
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, then you take the babies out with you.
or just take the loss.
Did you also criticize that genre of sort of fake found footage, Blair Witch Project style? Because isn't Paranormal Activity like all like baby monitors and stuff? And
no, I also thought Blair Witch Project. I thought Blair Witch Project was ridiculously clever as far as getting into the movie business, and those
Their
guys
marketing.
their marketing.
Yeah, that was like the first.
They were super smart, and I have read plenty of interviews with the director or the guys that made that, and I think they did a great job. I just thought it was dumb.
That should have been your column. This was dumb.
Actually, that's kind of what it was, the 25 things I hate about. It's like Will just exercising his superpower.
Well, then along that, so you were saying your writers they write what they want to write about.
Right, and that, I mean, at first we had this vision of like our, we should be this. No, we should be this. And we're kind of trying to figure that out. And, a lot of our writers are volunteers, and what we try to like do is give them at least the creative freedom and the room to like discuss things that interest them and give them something back. Like for many years we had Deb Jenkins, who's like an incredible like cook chef person about food, and she wrote a column all about food, and she was, an expert in that field. And when she talked about it from the heart. And so like that came through in her writing. And, she wasn't the most like polished writer, but we have editors, you know what I mean? So like we would make all that stuff work. And I think that's kind of like always been more of our style, is to like find people that are passionate about the things that they really believe and bleed in, and see if we can't give them a venue to talk about it.
No, but that's what's always been great about alternative media, is that part of it.
And it's not, they're not all like, I mean, like if you look at now, like the Village Voice owns like the group owns the majority of the weeklies. So it's like New Times, Village Voice own the majority of the weeklies in the country.
Did their paper version go away too? Are they only online now?
I'm not sure.
I thought Village Voice at one point did a major change to the point that it was, I don't know, I can't remember. Sorry, Willie.
Oh, no, I was just saying that, yeah, of course, Fargo Forum, USA Today, I mean, they still produce decent news. I mean, the High Plains, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have the money to send people to Venezuela right now, right?
Well, no, we don't. But also, we don't want news from Venezuela.
Yeah,
I think like people care more about like stuff that's relevant to them, and we try like the only thing that we've been doing, kind of like pushing ourselves towards, is hard news. And we hired Chris Hagen as our news editor. Like, we just loved how tenacious and how brilliant he was at attacking like a subject and a story, and really like gutsy and just unafraid to like drive across the state and chase a new like when the Savannah Graywin thing, like he had a lot of flack because he'd gone into the dumpster and found some of the notes and diaries from Brooklyn Cruise, and it like that kind of journalism, that kind of like is really what I think I'd like to be, because I think that's an important asset to the community. I think that adds and is productive for the people, like that alternative like news voice.
But okay, but this is the other thing. I also don't know if I like calling it alternative news. I mean, because
the alternative
local.
is like, here's the thing. I honestly don't care about the label. It's more about like what the intent is, and the intent is to give a balanced perspective. I mean, if we have only one, and there's nothing against the Forum. I think the Forum is a great publication, and I have no issue with them. My thing is that you can't have the openness and the variety of news and the balance in news if you only have one voice.
Well, steel cuts steel, right? Competition is good.
Competition
and
is
so,
good.
You talk about right now the race is to be the first person with a story for most major news outlets.
Right.
And what I'm seeing is that race is still there, but then they don't, once they get the story, they don't, the ideas don't stop. Do things like dig in the garbage.
Right.
Figure out, you want to be the first one to report on it, but if you're not the first person to report on it, at least be the person who gives the widest net.
That's exactly
for what
it,
it's
JJ.
supposed to be.
That's exactly it.
And I think that's where the younger reporters are going to learn from the older reporters who did stuff like that back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find news and I find journalism to be one of those things where batons get handed down quite a bit. And whether it's sources or just making that introduction for the next generation. And that's something that I know HPR does a lot is, you talk about these volunteers who come forward because they want to print something. They want they have something they're passionate about and they want to write it. And then writing for the HPR opens doors for them as far as, listen, I'm working on this piece, but I really need to get this. And someone can recommend like, well, have you talked to Will Block about this? Will Block happens to know so-and-so who might be able to add an extra 2 cents to it. And I've talked to quite a few people who've written for the HPR over the years. And that's what they say is like, it's not a training ground. It's a place where you go to absolutely learn a craft and to realize everything you learned about it in college is wrong. And the real world, the boots on the ground is much different than what you learned while you're sitting in a seminar hall.
Well, in institutions, once they become a certain size, their priorities change very easily. The things that they now care about, there are things that they have to care about that they may not have before. So, what does running this story do to us at this point in time when we have this relationship with someone else? We have a business to run. So do you think that for a paper like the High Plains Reader or any other alternative paper in any town, do you think there's sort of a size that it could grow to before it kind of becomes too dangerously large? Like we're going to lose a part of what we are
Right.
once we become this thing with different priorities.
I'd love to find out. I'd love to find out
Sure.
what that dangerously large is. The other side of that too is, we've been like when we talked about the Allison Moorhead thing, that definitely took a little wind out of our sails. There's always different conditions and things that happen, more competition for that shelf space, online products and whatnot. And I guess, I believe that where there's stress, there's form. If you evolve and you change to fit the world that you live in, then you deserve. It's very Darwinistic, but you have to be able to, change and grow. And if you can't, then maybe it's time to hang it up.
Right.
Well, then I don't know because I just do you guys know the podcast The Daily?
I know of it. I don't listen to it. But.
They just did an interview with the main editor of the New York Times that just did that interview with Trump.
Okay.
And
if it has Trump in it, I don't read it anymore.
Good for
Literally,
you.
I
No,
do
I-
not.
it's-
I just
what good does it do
What
you?
am I going to learn from this now?
Yeah.
Oh, is he lying again? Huh.
no, but the Daily. But it was with the editor that they went to the White House and they interviewed him.
Okay.
And the way they discussed, so the New York Times is what is it? Over 100 years old.
Yeah, it's the only paper that he really cares about because he is from New York, and being
Yep.
in the New York Times meant you were something.
You
No,
made it.
and so he
Yeah.
was asking basically saying, why don't you guys give me any good coverage? And they're like, because you're a douchebag. They didn't
something
say
good.
that. But the interesting thing was that they are definitely an institution, right? The New York Times, Washington Post are institutions, like the very definition of. But the one thing that he said on the Daily in his interview was that because they're an institution and they want to keep their credibility, that they care so much about their name. And so, yeah, they're definitely one of the biggest newspapers in the country, right?
Right.
But they care a shit ton about their name and reputation.
That's a really interesting. I've actually thought about this a lot. Recently, when you start looking at online advertising, embedded advertising, it looks like an article. It might look like a page in your newspaper.
Yep.
We have offers to do all kinds of stuff like that. And when I think about today, technology, computers make it very easy for people to do just about anything. If you wanted to,
Like a
make a
podcast.
publication, you can do it. No, but obviously,
true. It's true.
No, it's true.
100% true.
But what is your real asset? At the end of the day, what is the real value of what you have? And I think, especially when you're handling things like news, it's your credibility. If people trust you and think that you're that you're honest and that you that you're, real, they're going to trust the information that you're putting out there. Now, on the other side of that, if you start embedding advertising and putting like selling that, basically selling your credibility, fooling people with your credibility to think this is a legit article and this might be, something that you should try, that you should buy these hair growing pills or something like this, you're selling that out.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a weird thing in advertising right now where it's like people are very publications are shrinking, the internet's taking more of this pie, that pie. People are getting desperate, and I think that's why this advertising is coming up more and more.
But
It's
I don't know.
like once you sell everything on the shelf,
There's an attention
then it's just
economy that's going on, and so much. I think Jon Stewart was the first person I heard ever say it this way when someone asked him about the perceived liberal bias of media, and his opinion was that the media is not biased towards liberalism; it's biased towards sensationalism, because once you're large enough, you're in the attention economy, and there are choices being made on the front page of CNN of how do we make this title, grab the most eyeballs, and you can still do reporting in that, but you're also incentivized to continue an economic engine.
Okay,
and that colors a lot of what you do. And I would also argue, though, that I don't know if there is an institution around that doesn't care about their for the most part, that doesn't care about how they're perceived or what they think, because the New York Times can talk all day long about.
BuzzFeed just blew up with their reporting, and everybody goes, "No, you can't believe BuzzFeed because they're just a clickbait thing."
Yeah, but everyone says that about everything. Everyone says that there are people.
Well, but there are some publications
so many
that I'm going to trust over others.
Right.
There is definitely that is stratified. Like there's not just like all media is trustworthy.
No,
so
that's what I'm. I'm saying the same thing, but it's who is your audience still. The New York Times still has an audience, right?
Sure.
The Fox News, their audience believes that Fox News has all this quality, right? So there's still an audience that they're playing to.
Yeah, but they're stupid.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. I wanted to raise though that David Simon, co-creator of The Wire, has talked a lot in the past decade about how the biggest problem with the state of journalism is that these organizations, for the most part, are incentivized to not pay for journalism, but to pay for other stuff. So the local papers that would have beat reporters that did certain things, those are shrinking and shrinking. So if you're a local paper, you're not getting journalism a lot of the time from those sort of local beat people. Those budgets are going away.
But a lot of the stuff also like classifieds. We don't need classifieds anymore.
Sure.
I mean, they still exist in some newspapers. There's a lot of things like the reports that we used to do on school beat reporting stuff. A lot of that stuff is available online. Some of the things are redundant, repeated. So it's like we don't need 20 people doing the same thing anymore. We just need a few outlets for national news that are covering these things, And so it's like there's a reason they're going away. It's because there was too many of them.
All right, then I've got a question for you guys. Maybe I'm just cynical, but
You are cynical, that's
What
for
do you
sure.
mean?
But so am I, so that's awesome. Let's do it.
So I've always been curious. Don't believe in God, but I wish that when I do die, that there is a God or
An afterlife?
someone that's counting, so I can be like,
Oh.
how many ads did I view and actually fall for? Because I'm going to say 10. And he'll be like, actually, you were a freaking idiot. And you fell for at least 60.
Yeah, what counts as an ad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so going back to classifieds, to everything, how many ads do you guys think you've actually gone God damn, I need that right now? When you go through your
Plenty.
Facebook, when
Plenty.
you go through anything,
Plenty.
like JJ, I love listening to you on KFGO and whatnot,
Thank you very much.
but your ads, I'm just
I'm not enticing
There was a
you.
but there. But
I'm not enticing
I'm
you to
just
try that particular mattress store.
NPR.
I mean, maybe this isn't the year that you're going to stock up on farm fertilizer,
Here's-
but whatever.
Okay.
Maybe this is not the year for you. but-
Well,
So-
bombs.
So here's I think
Oh, I
the
shouldn't have
problem.
said that. God damn it.
Here's the problem I think you're going for, which is the fact that advertising is always going to exist, but the problem is advertising has really been like a mule in a cart, which is it is not progressing fast enough to keep up with the like 3 other advertisers who are riding, show ponies. Mm-hmm. And so there are certain companies who say, well, we've been around for 60 years and we always advertise on the radio, but so we're going to continue to advertise on the radio, and we're going to continue to use the same commercial that we cut 15 years ago, 25 years ago, and they're not allowing themselves to like hip up a little bit more. And the markets themselves don't want to hip themselves up because that would mean they have to change the way that they do things and maybe learn something or take a leap. I don't know how people like a previous guest of ours, Jason Jacobson, do it every day and sit and write copy for groups. Like here's a question. There used to be an entire set of advertisers who wrote coupons. That's what they did all the time. When was the last time you opened something other than a circular for a grocery store that had an actual clip coupon? Someone used to do that for the fucking phone book. Yeah. And that's how I used to get my Dwayne's pizza for cheap. Is because I would go to all my friends and pull out the Dwayne's coupon. But nowadays, you just mentioned that
turn on the page of the phone book.
You just mentioned like I saw it on your outdated website. And that's all you have to do anymore. And so that's the thing is until that there's some kind of a breaking point where the radio industry or the newspaper industry finally says, listen, you want to stop advertising because you're not seeing anything. The reason you're not seeing anything is because you are so woefully outdated.
Right.
That you need to come around. Like, for example, I mean, our podcast is sponsored. Mm-hmm. Our podcast, where we sit around and just chat with people for an hour twice a week, is sponsored.
Right.
That money traditionally should have gone to, like, a bigger media outlet.
Right. Whenever you're in any sort of thing where the audience is a part of it, where you're basically building an audience, you always end up with the question, what does our audience want? Right. What does our audience want to see? What does our audience want to hear? So if you're the person who's deciding what gets shown on the front page of CNN, they're going by analytics of, well, we know if it's an article about how much Trump is a shithead, we get this many more clicks than that. And so that's part of the calculus that comes into the institutions of a certain size.
And are you falling for an ad for a particular product, or is nowadays the big thing you're falling for brand awareness? Case in point, I hate Kmart. The Kmart on South University.
Which is really awkward because we're brought to you by Kmart.
Yeah. Oh, the South University Kmart is where my soul goes to die on a regular basis.
Not Walmart?
No,
that particular Kmart.
No, all Kmarts. When was the last time you were like, oh, look at this Kmart? Never. It's never happened to
When
you.
were you ever like, look at this Walmart?
But where are you going to a Kmart enough times that your soul dies at it regularly?
So Walmart,
I just stay away from that place.
Walmart is at least doing things like they're widening their aisles so that I can get down there with my giant cart of goods.
The lighting is easier on the eyes.
It's much easier on the eyes. And they're anyway. So my point here is
you guys were watching Willy's soul in his body.
My point here is that I hate Kmart, but when those ship my bed ads came out, I thought to myself,
ship my pants.
Yeah, did you see those ones?
Oh, yeah.
Ship
my pants.
Ship the bed. And then they did another one too, where they did a layaway ad, and I only remember these because they involved people from Second City when I was there that were like just starting to come up. So it must have been a Chicago firm who did it, but the ads were clever enough that I started thinking to myself, "Huh."
Wait, did you
Kmart's
just
really
drop you
crushing
were
it.
at Second City?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. That's what I did when I was in Chicago. When I was pretending to go to film school, I was really sitting around Second City being like, gosh, this is pretty awesome, you guys.
Second City was awesome. Okay, well, then I just read, but that's the whole thing about advertising is, so I think it was on Vox. It was the whole history of, remember the, what's up? And they did the entire history of how that ad got made and the advertising firm that went to Budweiser and then all of a sudden it was like the first viral commercial.
Okay.
Like one of the biggest
People
ones.
were sharing it and yeah.
Yeah, like it was the first. It was
Under-
email. It was
under
finally when
MySpace.
everybody had email, and so it was the guy that came up with it, and he traveled to visit a friend in Ireland, and all of a sudden he heard people in bars saying, "What's up?" And he was like, "But it's not even on the TV. It was just people emailing the crappy video of it." And I remember that, but I didn't run out and frickin' buy Budweiser.
Yeah, but here you are 25 years later talking about...
I know, but I'm not going to go buy Budweiser next.
But it's not like everybody's going to buy your product if you hear it, but you're not going to forget about Budweiser. It's not it's not going to be out of the top of your mind, and that's really what you want to be. Is like you want to have that recognizable.
But there's no
brand.
PBR commercial on, and I was buying PBR like nobody's business.
but
That's because you hate everything. That's
everything.
because you are the advertisement for PBR, whether you like it or not. You're not getting paid. You walk around in your like your shitty hat and your shitty pants, and people are like, "Hey, do you watch the show Shameless by any chance?"
Do you know how much this car hat
Costs? I don't know. Did you buy it? At
I want to know if Willy wants to admit on air, because I know Willy from 10 years ago would hate the Willy who brags about how expensive his Carhartt hat
is. In the show Shameless, they just had an episode where they were talking about. So there's an episode where they're talking about we're making a product that's aimed at the like shitty bars. It's called Hobo Loco. And they don't do a very good job in the show like portraying this, but their idea is like, we want this to be associated with the shittiest stuff ever. We want this to be associated with like duct tape on seats, and this is the type of stuff that you when you get kicked out of the bar, you buy a pint of and drink in the alley.
Derelict.
That's how exactly I'm thinking.
Derelict.
And so to me, and they're like, well, how are we going to advertise it? We're going to need a big name. They're like, no. We're going to give it to some people, and then they'll see it, and then other people will be like, oh, that's that shitty stuff that so-and-so was drinking. Well, how bad is it? I don't know. Let me try it. I'll take a shot of that. And before you know it, the people that they want to purchase it become the advertisers for it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing. And if you think that these things are happening by accident, you are so wrong.
But also, Willy, you have to understand that, John Q. Budweiser, when he was looking at the sales that year, he wasn't going, did Willy buy? He's going, did our sales go up? And I would assume they did, because that was an incredibly popular commercial.
What commercial would make a beer commercial? What does a beer commercial have to do to get you to be like, okay, I'll try one?
Boobs.
That's it? Because, boy, you missed the 80s, man. That was a prime time. And they had a
That's
dog.
exactly what Budweiser was doing.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Back to going,
like twins.
Back to dying and being like, what ads worked on me? I'm trying to, because I know there's been a couple, but like Facebook with their
apology ad, or which one?
No, any of their like they'll be like, oh, Will searched for Miyazaki sweaters. Because he's a Miyazaki fan, and all of a sudden I've
granular tracking.
Yeah, then I've got nothing but ads for, and then I'm like, oh, these are pretty sweet. I'm still not going to buy them.
You know what though? That's killed television ad sales. The markup for that. So I mean, there's still ads on TV all the time, but they're incredibly cheap to buy now because they're not nearly as valuable as ads online because you don't get the same granular data set back. If anything, you get, this aired this many times in this station, which had roughly this many people tuning into it.
But come on, aren't all four of us cord cutters?
Yeah, from that, all that means is that you're not paying cable for TV.
You know what I'm super.
But we're all still paying cable for internet.
But you know what I'm super scared of is now we're gonna get back to the cable prices of it's gonna be NBC with their private channel, Disney with their private channel, Netflix, Hulu. Because right now I've
already thought of that as a business, and it's gonna be called bundled, because where you pay bundled one price a month. And then we handle your subscription services for you. I've really thought this out because I'm in the same boat you are, which is like, I don't want a Netflix and a Disney and a Hulu. And before you know it, I'm like, there goes $95.
But part of it, too, though, is that there is competition in that space where there wasn't in cable before because of franchise fees, because of franchises. Yep. So basically, if you were born after the year 1995, let me tell you about something. If, especially in the 60s and 70s and 80s, if you're a cable company and you want to move into this town and bring cable to them, you could go to that town and then be granted what was called a franchise by the city, which would be effectively a government-backed monopoly of that area. So you had no competition. So in town here, it was Cable One forever, and that was all you had access to. And because they had no competition and they wanted to bundle everything, you were always having to pay an exorbitant amount of money for services you didn't use, and you had no other alternative to turn to. So I feel like in a borderless arena like the internet, Where
Well, it's not borderless anymore.
it is completely. The thing is I'm not worried about net neutrality one iota because net neutrality cannot defeat technology. Technology will always have a hand up over the gatekeepers for certain.
So,
if anything, it'll be internet just won't be a place where you go to make money anymore. Like it'll just be a place where it's you just have access to it wherever you are. You just have access to it. It's the internet. It's this new network now, and you wouldn't have to necessarily pay a gatekeeper to get to it at some point.
I am of the opinion that modern day advertising can only go so far. And while I appreciate not having to like see Tampax commercials every 5 minutes when I'm consuming my content, for some reason it's all adult diapers. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I search Buffalo Wings so often. But there is also something to being able to find products that they haven't deemed like this is a Raul product right here, which is like, I'll take it back to HPR. When I go through HPR and I find out that this particular musician's coming to town who I have an affinity for, but the internet doesn't realize I have an affinity for it yet.
There.
That's
the bubble.
That's the
thing.
one ad that gets me is going through the HPR and being like, oh, who's coming to town at Sanctuary Aquarium, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so those ads get me. There you go.
They convert you. That's how many conversions were you a part of is what that is.
No, but that formula, those algorithms that try and figure out what you like and are always feeding you the things that they think that you like.
Yep.
I mean, how many times have you ever gone just like
pull that mic
music
up to you a little bit more?
Oh, sorry. Music discovery is all about like figuring out what like what you do and don't like going into some weird spot and hearing a tune you never heard before, and all of a sudden you're like, this is amazing. I want more of this. But like you never get exposed to stuff like that anymore in advertising in the world that we're in, and that's like. There's personal algorithms for people for dating. Yep. There's algorithms for people so it's like eventually like we start getting pushed in a direction. We start getting pushed to like, not vote, or we start getting pushed to it's a strange world where we don't necessarily even think for ourselves anymore.
Right.
I think for myself very rarely. I am 100% a product of what I am today.
Plus, you're married.
I am married now. I definitely don't think for myself. Here's something that I wanted to bring up since Willy's on the podcast. I've asked Willy to do a lot of really messed up stuff over the years just to see if he'd do it. And let me tell you about the one time that he said no to me.
I know this story.
So years ago, Willy... I was in Chicago. I was doing a Second City intensive, actually, and I was staying at a hotel. And Willy and our buddy Dustin were at the hotel, and this is a time when the windows would still open a little bit, and a spider came into the room from outside. Now we were on like the 15th story, so this spider had come a long way to get up there, and Willy ate it. And he's like, I'm going to take its power because this is the strongest of all the spiders. And then a couple years later, we're eating like big kosher dill pickles on the like veranda of our friend's place. And someone takes a bite like, I hate this. And so they throw the pickle into the street, and it accumulates 2 days worth of like street garbage on it. And then we're like, Willy, take a bite of this. Picks it up, doesn't like dust it off, blow it off, just right into it. And then on that same trip, we saw a bulldog that had the biggest nuts I have ever seen on a dog in my entire life. And I was like, this is mind-blowing to me. I don't know if you guys saw the movie Van Wilder, but it looked just like that. And I was like, Willy, I think you should kiss that dog's nut. And he said no. He said no. What? Yeah. He said no. He got really close to it, and I have a great picture of him like right next to the nut, but he would not just give it a little kiss.
Do you know
Magnus
why
and
that all
Tactus.
started happening?
I was gonna say, you told me you wouldn't do it because you didn't want a picture floating around. So I've made it my goal to tell the story and to keep the legend alive.
No. The whole eating disgusting things came from back in high school when we were at REA's house.
What was the name of your little crew?
Champagne room?
The Champagne Room.
Yeah. And Champagners, right? You guys went by
the
Champagners.
And
Which is where I met Willy.
where we called them the Ass Kids.
Yep.
And because the Champagners were the cool alternative kids, a bunch of the ass girls came over, which I wanted nothing to do with. And it was during the summer, and on the screen door, there was a bunch of moths.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, how do you get rid of these annoying girls? And I was like, oh, here we go. And I just started grabbing moths off the screen door and eating them. And they quickly left.
That is messed up, dude.
Well,
But you became an ass kid in the process. You became the thing you hate.
Wait, I want to go.
You are what you eat, Will.
I want to go full circle. I don't know if Tucker's ever heard this story. Did you hear when I met Sam Raimi? If
No.
we're going back to Spider-Man.
No.
So, Spider-Man 2 was being shot in downtown Chicago. You remember the elevated train sequence with Doc Ock?
Yep.
So, there were flyers saying that they needed extras for Spider-Man, but it was big project season and didn't have time. And so I'm rushing to class in the morning, and there's cameras everywhere, huge, the film trucks that are filled with tens of thousands of dollars of equipment. And I see people with Daily Bugle papers.
Oh, nice.
And I'm going, oh, shit, god damn, I want to be an extra. And it was fairly cold out, and there's this guy in this puffy jacket. And because I sort of got past security, and I walked up to and I tapped him on the back, and he turned around and I go, is this Spider-Man 2? And he just gave me the strangest look and like, you idiot, and walked away. And I'm like, what a jerk. And I'm like,
Oh my god.
oh,
my god.
fuck, that was Sam Raimi.
You annoyed Sam Raimi.
And so I went to class and I was like, yeah, I just pissed off Sam Raimi.
Maybe that's why Spider-Man
watched-
3 sucks so
He
bad.
watched Willy sort of like dance away, and he's like, I got an idea for the third one.
I actually have a very positive thing to say about Willy. Is Willy got me into Achewood.
Oh, yeah?
He was the guy that introduced me into the Achewood comic strip because you showed me the Great Outdoor Fight.
Great Outdoor Fight is one of the best.
And then I got so addicted to it that I read it from the beginning. And I actually was about 10 feet away from Chris Onstad a few years ago. I went out to, where was he living at the time? Oh, he's still there. Portland, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
And we were visiting a friend, and he's the next door neighbors to Chris Onstad, and he does some like poster printing for him and stuff. And at one point, I just turn around and I see Chris Onstad walk out into his back porch with like a cigarette and a phone.
Of course he is.
And I really wanted to go say hi, but I was like, no, he's in his backyard. I can't like pop over the fence and be like, I really love Ray Smuckles. I name all my accounts after him.
Did you guys ever have like a cartoon strip that you ran in the HPR?
Yeah,
did
we
from time to
did.
time.
When we first started, we did Life in Hell. Matt Groening, we did Life in Hell. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
yeah, and which was, I mean, just basically the same panel with changing out the words. I think it was like the first guy to do that, like the same two little characters.
Oh, I didn't realize
And
he
then
was doing that.
that.
That style, like dinosaur
Yeah,
comics.
Right. Well,
Yeah, yep.
yeah, but I mean, like, Life in Hell was totally different vibe than like any of the Simpsons stuff. But like, yeah, and then we had Jeff Nelson did a comic called Stew for a while, which was, I don't know. I mean, it was like this kind of like off the wall, and he had like a lot of like little Fargo Easter eggs in there. So I mean, we did have our own local comic for a while.
It's always been a goal of mine to write something in the HPR at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it would be. I'm not quite sure what it would be. But one of these days, I want to be like, hey, Raul, I'm going to write this thing. And just print it, okay?
I'm gonna go with it.
Just
Is
print
that
it.
how a lot of this starts? Like you're just walking down the street and like, hey, Raul, I want to write about bathtubs.
You know what the worst one was? When Trump was first running for president. I was like, oh, Raul, I can do 25 things I hate about Trump. And it was like 3 days later, and it's like, oh, I've got to change it. I can't. This doesn't work for a weekly publication.
As we wrap this thing up, so HPR is congratulations. It's a great run, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of
thank you guys.
great years ahead of you. If people want to find it online, what's your website?
HPR1.com.
I've always wondered why HPR1.com did somebody
Because
just own
hand
HPR?
prop room out of LA. HPR, hand prop room out of LA. If you ever want to sell your URL really cheap, well, call me. You know, like. So yeah, and I was. We used to have HP Reader, but I'm like, oh, I want something short, and I'm like, I don't care. We'll just do HPR1. Big deal, you know.
Did you ever think about like just adding a 1 onto the title of the magazine? Like
We did
Reader 1.
actually contemplate that when we switched from High Plains Reader. We used to have our masthead say High Plains Reader. Now we just do HPR. We did contemplate that, but I was like, no, that's dumb.
Because it reminds me of Channel 1, which I was forced to watch in middle school.
Channel 1.
That's what I want to be
my
associated
God.
Yeah.
I bet anybody listening does not know what that is.
I guarantee
everybody.
you plenty
They
of
have that
people
across
do.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
in fact,
what that was their whole business model. Is like they'll be in every classroom.
Yep.
So, they don't make it anymore. They stopped making Channel 1. And I only know this because I did a deep dive into the Channel 1 Wikipedia page maybe like a week ago. But when you think of the number of people like who got their start, like Lisa Ling got her start on
Channel 1.
She's
1.
awesome, though.
She's fantastic.
Now, speaking of ads there, Channel 1 could only sell a very limited amount of advertising, and I think Surge, during its entire run in the mid to late 90s, bought every commercial.
But that was the real point of Channel 1, was to market to kids in school,
Yeah, right.
basically.
It was
That was
genius.
Captive audience
Yeah,
too. They
absolutely.
had to watch it. I remember we were like told like you can't talk during Channel 1. Like
Right.
you have to sit there and absorb it.
Right. There's something about programming that's aimed at teens that has to be like, like a brick wall, and we're here in our jeans, and like, yo, I'm gonna rap at you for a second.
I'm gonna sit on the top of this couch and I'm gonna talk to you kids about what's and like all my hand gestures are kind of like cupped hands, like what's going on, guys?
That is whack, JJ.
That is whack. Be like, hey kids, don't tell your parents we're giving away an Apple too. But if people want to fight, do you have a Twitter? Are you on the Instagrams?
Yep, Twitter, HPRFM. I think we're also HPRFM on Twitter. Instagram, and HP Reader on Facebook. Well, you just
Go to HPR1
you just
and it's all
Google us.
listed
We'll
there.
be on the Google.
Do you guys ever think about putting like a full digital edition out there where people could download it every week?
We have for a while we were doing like a issue, where you can just download the PDF of the issue and just kind of. But the thing about that is it's just like it churns like pages. I'm just like
It's all on the website, isn't it?
yeah. I
Just
mean,
about.
I kind of feel like that there's it's good that you have what people are going to absorb on is social media. That's where they're going to use it. The issue stuff didn't get as much circulation as I wanted to. And I'm like, people will pick and choose the articles they like, and they'll get the online version, and the people that want the print version got the print version, and then everybody's happy.
What kind of a master archive do you guys keep? Like, do you actually have?
Piles of newspapers.
Do you actually have the physical copies?
Have you been to the Brownstone?
Never once.
I was
No.
gonna say just this morning I was talking about
If you walk in the door,
You might get but that's not our archives. In our basement we have just boxes and boxes
Next
We
to, like,
keep
the water heater and stuff, like the safest places you can put your paper.
Lots of perfectly.
Do you
But
remember
we also
Indiana
are
Jones
microfiche
except
with
lame.
the
Microfiche? Do you use microfiche?
we have microfiche like archiving through the library in Bismarck. So.
Nice.
do you remember years ago when that van in the Fargo Theater parking lot that was full of HPRs went up in flames?
Oh my God!
I used to think like, well, there's their archive right there. That was a fun day at work.
God.
Do you remember that? Yes. You were
The
probably around for
HPR
that.
man, they caught fire. Oh my God! I had forgotten about that.
Oh, it's one of my
Thank
favorite HPR stories. Are you kidding me? Do you think we'll ever see a day where you'll start, scan covers that you didn't previously have? I mean, do you have a digital version of a lot of stuff?
I have a digital version of a lot of stuff. There's been hard drive crashes.
Oh no, that's the worst.
And that's the thing is, like, before we had the cloud, now everything's in the cloud. Now I archives everything to the cloud. But I still have those hard drives around. And I'm thinking one of these days, we don't have the way to fix it now, but maybe
You need a
maybe
raid.
in the future.
You need a raid. That's what you need. You need network
I
attached
had a
storage.
raid, and I did have a raid, but then
But now you need a new one
When
because
it
that one
broke.
isn't here anymore. You
no,
need a better
I
one.
just put everything up on Dropbox and archives it like that.
Do you have interns? Do you bring in
Yeah,
people for college credit?
We do. We have interns in writing. We have interns in design. We have interns in advertising. So
I would love to see a big HPR party where as many covers as possible are like on this massive print. Or like, could you see like a billboard like that would have that? Wouldn't that be wild?
We did a show when I think it was maybe our. I want to say it was like maybe our 15th birthday or something, but we had a big show in
at the Plains Art Museum.
Yeah, and we had a huge archive like of just old covers. Yeah, there's some good ones. There's some pretty terrible ones. We all have our we all have our off weeks, but
I look back at some of my old Linebenders posters and I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm surprised anyone came to this show. I might as well have just done this in crayon.
You can definitely at Theater B, you can tell when I stopped designing the posters and Jeff Knight started.
I remember commenting. I thought your posters were great.
Well, thank you, but they're even way better now because it is
Jeff
Knight's
Knight's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I remember the season where it was like, every poster fits into another poster so that when people collect all of them, they'll make this like one giant image.
Well, that was for Kuwait, specific for that show.
But then we would have a whole season.
Then
of
we would
like,
do season with theme styles. Yeah,
and I remember being like,
you stole that from the X-Men cards.
Oh yeah, because they invented
it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Willy. Doing a print in themes it's a really new concept that the X-Men trading cards came up with that I stole.
Geez, you guys are really going after each other today. Willy, it's always a good time to see
from the spines of the Star Trek VHS tape. That's what I stole it from.
Ooh, those are good.
Willy, what about you? Where can people find you? And like,
don't find me.
He doesn't even spell his name correctly on Facebook, so you can't easily find him.
Willy is famous for a particular letter that has become kind of like your calling card a little bit over the years. Did you ever make those into like stickers?
The really big A?
Yeah.
What?
That's the how much time do we have left?
Oh, as much as you want. I mean,
Yeah.
Do you want the really big A story?
Sure.
Let's do it.
The really big A story is so I went to school in Chicago and I took history and comedy class. Teacher was fantastic, but one of the projects was the joke that you make something bigger than it should be. So like a pen the size of a car. And I always found that comedy to be ridiculously stupid, and I hated it. And
It's very laugh-in style comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, laughing. And he handed out a worksheet that had make a blank as big as a blank or make a blank as small as a blank. And all I wrote down was make an A as big as a really big A. And for some reason, he said that we had 2 weeks to work on this project. Guess how much time I spent?
20 minutes before class started.
And so the day before, my friends that like to imbibe in smoking pot, I was like, "Oh, I've got this. What am I gonna do?" And my friend is like, "I've got this metal pipe.
Did he smoke weed out of it?
Let's cook a bunch of spaghetti, grind it up, pour it into the pipe, and make a giant piece of spaghetti." This is the day before the project's due. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Didn't care. Not thinking like no air is gonna get to it. It's not gonna harden. Plus, there's no way. There's no way to get it out of the pipe because it's gonna be stuck in there. And so it's getting to like 2 a.m. And I'm going, nope, it's still not solid. There's no giant piece of spaghetti. Class starts at 8. And I'm just like, oh, well, I can't bring in a metal pipe with nothing but ground up spaghetti. And I'm like, oh, wait, make an A as big as a really big A. And so I went and got some cardboard and duct tape. And I made an A as big as really big A, which is about a foot tall.
Yep.
And duct taped it all together so it was 3D. Also used baby diaper pins.
Nice.
And
Which, by the way, how did you come upon baby diaper pins?
We just found them on the ground.
Yep.
And it was the biggest piece of shit. And I'm just looking at it and going like, wow, this is going to go great. And my friend goes, oh my God, I've got the best color for it. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Dwayne? And he's like, I was at the art store and there was this paint on sale and it's called Salmon. And let me go get it. And so he runs up to his dorm room, comes back with this color called Salmon. And so I paint the cardboard in this salmon with duct tape and baby push pins, whatever, wrap it in a garbage bag and show up to class. And it's a comedy class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
What
so
did the other students have?
this is the thing, is that there was people in this class that didn't like me.
No.
And there was like the one girl that really disliked me had made a giant mosquito and sewed it, and obviously spent the entire 2 weeks working her ass off on it, and it had microbes in it that represented AIDS and other shit.
Very funny stuff.
Yeah. Which I thought was stupid, and I told her so.
Gee, I wonder why they didn't like you, Willy.
And so my teacher finally, Will, you're up. And so there's one of those stupid art stools, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And I go up there with my garbage bag, and I rip off the garbage bag, and there's an A as big as really big A, but it's not that big.
Ta-da!
Yeah, and I was like, ah. And half the class lost their minds going, Will's a giant jackass, but this is funny as shit. The other half was completely pissed as hell. And the teacher goes, Will, do you even care? Like, do you know you're at one of the most expensive art schools in one of the most expensive cities, and this is... And I'm like, yeah, I got half the class to laugh. It's a comedy school, so I won. That girl with the stupid mosquito, nobody laughed at her shit. And so for the rest of my career, if you look at any of my art, there are hidden A's in everything. Mm-hmm. And A as big as a really big A, or I'm an asshole.
You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering this. Was there a story about someone's asshole from you?
No.
The concept for I remember this. It was the concept for like a student film where it was just going to be a close-up of like a butthole flexing in and out. You don't remember talking about that?
Nope.
That was when Tucker and I came down to visit you, is when you told us all about this story. You were like, yeah, we're in this filmmaking class, and I was just thinking about like, what am I going to do for this? I'm going to make this asshole that's like... Because the joke is that it had to be like a 5-minute short. And you go...
Yep.
The joke is they'd have to sit and watch all 5 minutes of it before they can even turn it off. And just have to sit there and power through it.
Yeah, creative problem solving.
Yep.
Nice.
And I think that wraps up this episode of JJ Meets World.
At least we know
brought
what
to
the
you by
thumbnail's
a
gonna
big
be.
letter A, a really big A. Raul, Willy, thank you guys so much for being on. Thanks for your
having us,
time.
man. This is fun.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. That dog I was talking about with Willy that had the huge nuts, I got one of the nuts. And so I'm going to trick him into kissing it one day. I don't know how, but one day.